Hello out there. This is Calvin Bouchard. May I please have your kind attention? Due to technical difficulties, it has become necessary for us to temporarily close the undersea canyon. Now, for those of y'all who are still in the underwater portion of this park, please follow your guides, and they will point out the most convenient and accessible exits.
You've joined the Betamax Video Club, rewinding back to our favourite films of the 1980s. My name's Rich Nelson, and tonight I've rented Jaws 3. Watching with me is Simon Pegg. Hi Simon, how are you?
Hi Rich, I'm very well, thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
So you came to me saying you really wanted to do Jaws 3. How was it watching for you this time?
Oh, now there's an experience. The reason I wanted to do this is because unfortunately you're not doing anything from the 70s, and the original Jaws is my favourite film, as it probably is for a lot of people. And I thought, well, the next best thing is to do one of the sequels, and obviously Jaws 3 is that one, a film whose only saving grace is that it's not Jaws the Revenge. But a good film nonetheless, and something to, sort of keep me interested in it. So, I sort of saw it many years ago, a couple of times on the television, never got to see it on the cinema, and, worth a purchase on the Blu-ray just to see, if it was just as bad as I remembered all those years ago.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, for me, it's sort of sticking within the 80s, semi-hamstringing yourself to a point, but, and without even looking at Jaws 2 and the issues of how do you follow on one of probably best films of all time, certainly one of the most popular. Jaws 2 kept on a fairly similar theme. This was just off the charts. The fact that we'll start with the credits, and the fact that it's marketed as Jaws 3D.
Yeah, one of a whole sort of slew of films that sort of came out. I think it was Amity 3D and a few other bits and pieces, and it was just something that I thought, well, this is a gimmick. I mean, originally, for the information of the film, the third film, this film was going to be pitched as a spoof. And I think the original title was sort of muted as sort of Jaws 3, Humans Nil. But Spielberg sort of got involved and said, it's, dumping on your own doorstep by going down that route. And he threatened to pull out of movies with the cinema group, and they sort of went back to this. Well, I don't know what you call it. It's got every 80s cliche thrown at it. With the big budget, the 3D, totally going for it. So yeah.
I mean, it's strange in that the 3D, and again, we're at a time, this came out in the UK anyway, at the end of 1983, where home video is taking off. Still fairly early days, but a lot of people are starting to watch films at home, or certainly not at the movies. And 3D then was something you did at the cinema and only the cinema.
Absolutely.
It's not like, the modern day where people have 3D TVs at home, but there's so blatantly trying to shoehorn in from the opening scene and the credits with that really ugly fish where it's been
a full 20 seconds of a rotating fish head just to draw you in. This is the film you're here for. Let's start with a rotating dismembered fish head, and let's get you in the mood for the next hour and a half. And it's a perfect spectacle.
I mean, you think that sort of Avatar, when that came out, I mean, we're talking about 2008, I think that was, and that was generally credited with relaunching 3D in the cinemas, and yet this probably had the opposite effect. If anything, it kind of gave it the kiss of death and put it away for 30 years. It was really bad.
I say, completely sort of tied a pair of concrete boots, and it just completely drowned off it. Everyone knows it. It's the sort of the sequel that, as I say, the only redeeming feature of the whole film, whether 3D or not, is that it's not Jaws 4, which you'll probably come to later. But as I say, the dismembered fish head rotating the camera. Even watching it at home now, obviously, the benefit of 3D TVs and things like that, it still looks as dated as it should do at the time. I think it even looked dated the day it came out. It's I think there was a few sort of things in the studio about trying to make a few of the scenes 3D, but obviously when they sort of invested in it and they said, well, you've just got to throw as much money up, we need every little thing 3D we can, and obviously it's very jarring when you watch it at home. You can notice it, but it's a product of its time. It's 30 odd years old, and it's nice to see that it's come a little bit further in 3D technology since then.
Thank the heavens. But sort of one of the whole theme around the film where the first one was set around Amity Island, and this is very much set in and around a sort of SeaWorld rip-off theme park. Where, again, being a film of its time, where keeping animals in captivity was a good thing, and how it was celebrating the whales and the dolphins, and without, I'll say spoiler alert, but essentially the plot about halfway through the film is to capture a shark and keep it in captivity.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's exactly the same thought struck me watching it. I mean, back then, popular tourist attraction, and this film doesn't miss any opportunity to get either a whale performing, eating out of someone's hand, or a pair of dolphins jumping up into the air. And it is slightly cringeworthy now when you think about all the bad publicity that goes with SeaWorld and everything then on their best intentions and all that. But it's a slightly jarring thing to watch from that film now. Probably the most horrifying thing about it, actually.
Yeah, I think so. The water park itself, when they had the little start where the cast and the sort of extras are in the background having their hair and nails trimmed, and it's very much like a sort of cross between Holiday Hut Camp from Dirty Dancing and some sort of weird cult. Everyone has to celebrate the leader, and it sort of becomes clear very quickly that this is essentially they try and shoehorn and retcon references to the original movies, when Dennis Quaid, he wasn't, I guess he must have been an up and coming star. It turns out that he was one of Chief Brody's sons, and then
as I say, every possible piece to shoehorn in. I mean, not just one of the Brodies, Dennis Quaid, but they even sort of bring in later his brother, and there's a whole scene with him and his girlfriend walking on the beach, and he basically just gives away the shark accident in the first film, and everything going on. I mean, you mentioned sort of Dennis Quaid as an up and coming star. I mean, when he was sort of later interviewed about it, I think his sort of quote on his appearance in this film was, "I was in Jules Watt," which sort of, basically shows exactly what he thought of this as a starring role and legacy it left, really. But, yeah. And it's actually a film, if you actually watch it, all the way through, you actually don't focus on the shark. It's about Dennis Quaid's character having a complete breakdown throughout the entire course of the film. Particularly when he, we'll probably get to that later, when he sort of goes on and starts warning people about this massive shark terrorising the park. But yeah.
And he'd be carted away by the local mental health team, I think. But and it's strange, obviously a typical film that aims a little bit lower, perhaps, is that everything in the first sort of 10 to 15 minutes, they're trying to explain exactly what's going on. They don't want the audience to waste their time actually having to think about it.
No.
This is a theme park.
Yeah, there's one line in particular that stands out after you get the snapping logo to screen, and Dennis Quaid gets introduced, and the whole sort of water skiers. I mean, water skiers feature everywhere in this film.
Yeah,
it's a pure advert for water skiers. None of them get killed by a shark.
No,
why they're there? Water parks are synonymous with water skiers. Apparently, none of them get killed. But one of the first lines of the entire film comes from the water skier as they going past one of the jetties where there's these sort of buff guys coming out there, all chests exposed. And she just looks over and says, "Look at the size of his jockey shorts." And it's something that really stands out. I think, what the hell are we in here for this, But the whole film, and then sort of later, at the same time as this is said, there's a little thing that comes up on the screen about the film is suggested by the novel Jaws.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a contrast in the sort of the dialogue they're using, and we're just suggesting it from the novel Jaws. But yeah,
heavily inspired by.
Heavily inspired.
Talk about the water skiers, and immediately, and perhaps not at the time, but looking back, we've got Leah Thompson, who everyone knows from Back to the Future, and she's a fairly major character in this, and she just seems to be this very carefree, just happens to be a water skier, this, that, and the other. Seems to do her best to get this bloke who she's just met to overcome his fears. Very noble cause, but ultimately. She's not even there to drive the plot along. It's basically a shark film at a theme park that they just happen to be. Right, we'll call some of them Brody and call it Jaws.
That's basically it. It's a film that suffers from perhaps too many characters. Hoping wonderfully, there's no one's given a chance to develop. I mean, not even one of the Brody. I mean, they could have just had the one Brody kid as Dennis Quaid's character. that would have been perfectly acceptable. What they bring in too, and then they don't do anything with the second one. He's just basically there to occasionally dip his toe into the water because Leah Thompson drags him in and puts him on a couple of bumper boats and away he goes. And there's not what else he really does in the entire film.
I'm not going to lie. I mean, that would work for me if I was scared of water and so forth. But I think my wife's sort of sticking around the door. But like you say, we've had all this very shoehorn building up and everything. And first death, it comes fairly. It's about 13 and a half, 14 minutes, where one of the lackeys, who has a couple of quotes early on,
Magnum PI.
Yes.
There's basically a man who probably auditioned for every 80s cop show going. he's got the tash, he's got the huge bill, the curly hair, and he looks the part. Magnum PI gets his come up and probably the most believable character. Yeah,
we can't even say he wasn't acting; he was just being himself.
He was just being himself. Yeah, and he constantly gets referenced throughout the film. It takes them about what was the film to actually find him. So yeah.
For a small part, his death is a very symbolic thing, and the fact that he's gone down to fix whatever was wrong with the gate, and all of a sudden it's just an excuse. We see their attempt at recreating Richard Dreyfuss's eyes, the panic,
yes, yeah,
and then a bit of red blood, this and the other, and all of a sudden it's just another excuse to show a bit of arm,
3D, yeah.
Bit of arms, the two bones sticking out. Just floating.
And spoiler alert. Yeah, but spoiler alert. That's not the only part of him that's left, is it? Because you find out later that he's basically just had a couple of fingers bitten off because there seems to be an awful lot of him left.
Yeah.
Wrong. But for now we're talking about just a right hand in the water. Another excuse for a blatant 3D shot. Swarms of red. And so we've gone from a fish head to a right arm. We're sort of gradually building up to an entire corpse.
Oh, thank God. And we move on. The next scene is in the bar. I don't know if this is a staff bar or where the customers go, but it's the most stereotypical 80s movie bar. They've got this random, very strange game that I've never seen before, where the people are queuing up to sort of push. I don't know.
Standoff. It's called Standoff, and I'm thinking I think I've never heard of this game. I've seen this film more than once before. What the hell is it? I don't know anyone who would play this. It's all very strange. We've gone straight to this bar scene, and there's people basically playing Pathicate, but not even taking a hand. Just pushing each other until one of them falls over.
It's like a grown-up version of Slaps.
Grown-up version's a little bit, version, but it's just very well. And of course, the first you've got this hulking guy, and there's Leah Thompson's character basically taking all the pushing, and yet she somehow managed to push over this brute, and she's won.
Looks a bit like they're using the force or something.
Using the force, yeah, absolutely. Shoehorning in something else.
And then, so very quickly, they form a bond, as you do in the 80s. Again, Leah Thompson, carefree. She doesn't take long to get her claws into him. And
also, Sean Brody, this character, this sort of secondary brother, comes up and basically says to his brother, "Well, I'll go and have a go at this. I'm interstate champion at this imaginary game that nobody else seems to play outside the cinematic universe, and I'll come up there." And immediately goes up to it, puts his hands on it. They start pushing against each other, and it's a great way to introduce yourself. Is my fly undone? Well, of course, she naturally looks down. What a way, that's an opening line and a half. Is my fly undone? And boom, he suddenly won.
And recommending that in the current day, just walk up to a lady, tell her your fly's open and push her over. I think that's asking to be arrested there, I think.
The whole film is just misogyny in an hour and a half. We haven't even got the really good stuff yet with Simon McCorkindale, but it's just misogyny all the way through. Magnum PI doing his little bit, and obviously Bouchard and everyone else that comes into it. It's just it's crazy. But so Standoff is the game that they'll all be playing on. Well, when it gets a remake, no doubt.
I think so. Jaws 3 2, maybe.
Jaws 3 2.
Better than that's not as good as Jaws 3 Humans Nil, but
Jaws 3 Human Nil. I still think it would have been better.
But one thing we sort of see in between the bar scene and them clearly going off behind the windbreaks, the coral thieves in the little dinghy.
Oh, absolutely.
Now,
yes.
I can't see any point in them. It sounds horrible, but they don't drive a plot. All they seem to do is they're there to steal coral, and they die.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously they meet their demise. And you don't actually see anything gory for a film that got... I mean, at the time, I think there was some concern about the amount of violence in it, and for something which is just there purely as shark bait, you don't see anything of them. And they're that unimportant to the plot that when you first see them, they're just an inflatable raft, which, of course, if they can't even get that down, to the water without it inflating halfway up the beach, and they're sort of calling each other assholes. But in the time it takes them to do that, they're that unimportant. You actually get a cut scene back to the bar. The only purpose is to cut back to the bar is to find out who is paying for the round of drinks. And then it cuts back to the guys on the raft. So they're that unimportant. It's better to go back to the bar and actually see who's paying for a round of drinks than it is to stick with a couple of guys who obviously end up as shark bait. And, they go back as coral thieves, and they're all there for about 2 minutes before them and the raft gets eaten.
Both unimportant and incompetent, I think. There's similar to the wet bandits from Home Alone.
And less important than a bar tab. Yeah.
Well, it was maybe the producers wanting to know where all their money was going, I think. But as you say, we cut back to the happy couple splitting off and doing their things. And one thing that I found quite uncomfortable, I've got 2 younger brothers, and I'm not going to say that my family was involved in a shark attack back in Amity Island, but to see if one of them was perhaps scarred by this whole experience, I wouldn't turn up with my girlfriend and a megaphone watching him basically skinny dipping.
Yeah. And Thompson, let's not leave her out of this. Let's give her the credit she deserves for actually getting him into the water.
No, you'd give him a round of applause, and obviously give him a round of applause for winning his game of standoff with her enough. It was obviously the reward. But I found that bit quite weird, because why would you want to watch your brother doing that? At least he interrupted him when he did, but then they had a little bit of 80s movie hijinks. The brother with his little skimpy pants on deciding to jump all over his brother. That's going to be...
Considering he's actually afraid of the water because he's just gone in there after, God knows how many years it's probably been. You get someone, shouting on a loud hailer in the dark and, potentially frightening. Him being in a pair of very skimpy shorts in the water with a rather attractive lady is probably not a very good idea if he's of a nervous disposition. But he somehow makes it out before the hijinks start, so yeah, all good.
After that, so we've had the voyeurism and everything else, it all gets very strange. And we start to see the whole undersea kingdom. We see the control room, the sunken boat.
The $34 million undersea kingdom, which gets mentioned more time than I can remember in this whole scene, with Bouchard coming in with Lou Gossett Jr. doing his bit. Is a big thing about $34 million. And, he's sort of, he's basically playing the Mayor of Amity with a better dress sense and slightly better public relations, I think, at this time.
Come later on, he does make some somewhat tasteless jokes, but generally this, where we see Brody, also Big Brother Brody, and the girlfriend going down, they're looking for this chap, Magnum PI's body, and of course another gratuitous 3D scene of the submarine. I won't say I bought the DVD off Amazon for about 99p, and you can see the panels of the submarine disappearing because they've been rendered so fully.
It turns round to the left, doesn't it? Yeah, totally noticed that. Yeah, it's exactly. Yeah, it's so jarring, but yeah, it's just something you really shouldn't be noticing in a film. Otherwise, is the level of those effects. So that's a testament to the sort of film we're looking at. Yeah, but absolutely.
So they go into the sunken boat. Looking for presumably this Chummy's corpse, and the dolphins that obviously they're there for a reason, because why would they be in the film? That the lady's been training, and they turn up like Lassie saying, "Oh, there's a boy down the well, caution, there's something going on here." And bear in mind we're probably about half an hour into the film. These sharks can got to get this right. These dolphins come up, they're very vocal, they obviously have a bond with this lady. Not so much with the bloke. And all of a sudden, what comes out? Shark.
Yeah.
And I'm no shark expert, but this shark sort of appears like a battering ram.
Yeah, exactly that. He's been fired from a cannon at a close stage. Yeah. It's very cartoonesque, his first proper appearance. It's just shoving straight into the galleon, coming out on the other side like a hunter would have his trophies. You expect, the back of the animal would be on the back of the wall. The head is just rammed through the wall. That's what this shark has done on the side of the boat.
It's come from Acme Supplies.
Acme Supplies, yeah.
We get the dolphins, obviously very intelligent animals, dragging the two back up to land.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, they're like seahorses. They sort of climb on the back of these things, and next thing you know, they're essentially underwater skiers. They got on the back of these dolphins and just rescue. Yeah, it's actually, when you think about it, it's actually a great setup. It's a great idea for a scene. The shark coming and we'll get on a couple of dolphins and ride away. It's probably the inspiration for where the old Pirates of the Caribbean decided that Jack Sparrow could leave an island by strapping himself to a couple of sea turtles. But yeah, I mean, it's a great scene on paper, no doubt. In reality, it's okay. I mean, actually, for that particular area, we're actually doing that with real guys on real dolphins and doing it. The actual cinematography of that isn't actually too bad. It actually works because they don't focus on the shark chasing them too much.
And as you say, it just about works. And it's very much the best of a bad film. It's one of those moments. But something I did have to do when I saw this, I had to take to Google and find out what the top speed of a dolphin is.
African European.
I wasn't sure. Flipper, I think. And then I had to compare with the top speed of a great white. Now, we do find out later on that this is only a small shark. This isn't a fully grown one.
And not yet.
So, still looking, the top speed of a dolphin apparently is 20 miles per hour. And the top speed of a great white shark, now I'd imagine this is an adult, fully fit shark, is about 25 miles per hour.
But don't forget, he has probably sustained a concussion from ramming that galley. So he's easily going to lose 6 or 7 miles an hour on that.
But then the dolphins are dragging an adult human each.
So, well, they are. Yeah. They are.
But, hey-ho, I'm no expert. They managed to get themselves back into the sort of safer SeaWorld area. And, again, the shark bangs his head on the cage trying to get in, which, again, he kind of bounced off up out of the water and semi-comical effect.
Yeah, he's the Wile E. Coyote of the shark world.
me, but so obviously they've decided they've got English chummy there. What was his name?
Oh, Fitzroy.
Fitzroy.
Yes,
with a capital R.
Oh, yeah, capital R. A man who is so devoted to photographing and then killing his prey, and yet this is the same guy who, a couple of years or so before him, had been in a show called Manimal, about a man who actually, transformed himself into animals. He's a great animal lover, and here he is again, shooting them in all sort of. But he again is, if the whole film is basically misogyny, he is the walking embodiment of that. His first sort of line up to Kathy, Dennis Quaid's sort of partner in that is just purely sort of a woman. Roger Moore in Moonlight to Hollywood and he says, a woman. He has exactly the same thing here. He's looking for someone in authority, and he said, well, that'll be me. And his look is fantastic on that. He's absolutely walking misogyny with an English accent.
Yeah, but he's sort of almost playing it like a budget Roger Moore. In the way that you can just imagine him. A woman. But he sort of has a semi sort of major role throughout, and once the dolphins have dragged the humans back to safety, they have talking the morals between captivity and everything, where they're trying to debate, do they kill this shark or do they bring him into captivity? And we get Louis Gossett Jr. sort of rocking up thinking, this will be good for the ratings, and let's get a live shark death on TV.
Yeah.
But also weighing that up against, let's grab him, keep him in a tank, and charge people to come in.
Yeah.
Not even for research.
No. I mean, it must be one of those sort of dilemmas that Donald Trump has every day. Is it about the ratings or is it about the money?
It's a fine line.
It's a fine line, yeah. Yeah, with less 3D, yeah.
Something again, you look back and recognise people from other films, and Fitzroy's little, I'll call him Smithers, his little lackey, is
Jacker.
Hatchet Harry from Lock, Stock. But he's getting these very token Cockneyisms in there. One of the ones was he was getting in the water. He just said out of no reason, brown bread, governor.
Brown bread, governor. Governor is used in this film probably more than the word shark. It's everywhere. When he's on screen, like, governor, governor.
He's standing there with a little trident just going, don't disrespect the governor.
You slag.
Who took a couple of shooters in my bag. And his job's to pull the pins on the grenades and things like that. It's
yeah. But he has got a heart. He's got a very caring side, which you sort of find out later, just before Manimal on the Crocodile decides to go down later on.
Yeah, we sort of see that, and it's almost a bit of that sort of unrequited love, perhaps.
Absolutely, yeah.
It sounds. I think going back to a Bond film, and the bit at the end of The View to a Kill with the geezer on the blimp.
Oh, yes,
Max,
yes. It's just Jacko. Governor.
So they've decided, right, what we'll do, we'll capture him, get him in captivity, and again play that for the ratings because Mr. Manimal's down there with his posh camera.
I mean, let's be honest. If they actually hadn't gone the other way, they could have knocked 20 minutes off the running time of this film, and it probably would have been a little bit tighter on the edit. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of 3D to lose potentially. But we, the fact that it's clearly shot in a swimming pool, hey ho. And ripping off from the original Jaws, we'll shoot him with a balloon tied to a bit of string.
That's it. It always works.
We've got the shark. He's lifted by a hydraulic crane because you always need one just in case you capture a shark. He's lifted into the tank in SeaWorld with the most lax health and safety guidance I've ever seen.
Yeah. There's not a high vis or a warning sign inside. Absolutely not.
If you're sitting there working, thinking, right, I've got a shark who may have killed someone, we don't know that for sure yet.
Yeah.
He's certainly looking like he's got a taste for it. So we'll get in the pool with him.
And resuscitate him. We're trying to bring him back.
We'll feed a hose into his mouth. Dennis Quaid, who I don't know what sort of scientific medical background he's got, gets in after trying to chat up the doctor, we're talking again, making a joke about his flies, and jumps in, and all of a sudden, oh my God, this shark is awake and is very scary.
Yeah, absolutely. He's gone there. I mean, in the whole process of getting them there, it's like, there's nothing going on. One thing I just want to go back to, because one thing that sort of stood out is that one of the things that comes in all the Jaws films is that there's always a strong hint on the way the shark is going to eventually meet its demise in each of the films. I mean, obviously the air tanks, the first one. And there's things which are mentioned quite a lot in this film. The first bit, before they actually go and capture this little baby shark, there's a whole thing about the grenades.
Yes, the Mills bombs.
Fitzroy. And apparently, Her Majesty's government supplies the ordnances to mix up these homemade death traps, with pills, which actually gets mentioned. And Jacko, in one of his rare moments when he's using the word governor, actually says, "You remember Australia, Gov." So I want that offshoot film. I want to know what happened in Australia with Jacko, with Fitzroy's and grenades, because that sounds eminently more exciting than, trying to actually feed a hose into a shark.
Well, that would be a great spin-off. And one thing that I do try and ask guests on the podcast is if this film was remade. Now, I think it might be a wiser idea because I don't want to remake Jaws 3.
Yeah.
This film should not be remade, but we should make that spin-off.
Absolutely.
So if we made the spin-off, whatever we decided to call it, Fitzroyce and Governor, it's...
Governor.
And filmed around the time of Australia, who would be in it if it was now?
Oh God! Well, I mean, who do we know who can say the word governor with such a plum?
It'd have to be sort of Danny Dyer.
You are exactly where I am in my mindset with that.
And even looks-wise, and that sort of faux British accent. What's the chap who plays Thor? Chris Hemsworth, is it, or Liam Hemsworth? One of them.
Yeah, Chris Hemsworth. Yeah,
He could imagine the two of those. Chris Hemsworth and Danny Dyer go off to Australia with Her Majesty's grenades.
Her Majesty's grenades, absolutely. We're here to to blow up sharks. And, yeah, God knows what else. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
Of course, with Danny Dyer being descended from royalty, it brings that extra gravitas to the role.
That's what it is. He's actually calling in a family favour to get the ordnance. That's what it is.
He's descended from Plantagenet. Governor. I'd like to. I'm really interested in that film. I don't really want to watch the rest of Jaws. I want to watch that.
Yeah, you go off the Great Barrier Reef. There's Danny Dyer and there's sort of Hemsworth and Her Majesty's Ordnance in a boat. Yeah, I mean, you've got all the sharks.
Is it a comedy? Is it a drama? Is it a thriller? Ooh, there's a bit of something for everyone there.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the bromance too between the two.
It was a little bit Brokeback, wasn't it?
It was a little bit Brokeback, yeah.
And the bit again jumping forward later on where Fitzroyce, obviously perishes, and there are tears shed by Governor. It's.
I mean, I think we get about half a dozen governors in quick succession, each one raising an octave every time the lower he goes down and shout into it. He is totally cut up by this. Yeah, totally.
But then I suppose he's probably thinking, well, where's my next paycheck coming from?
Yeah.
Trying to go back to Jaws 3, but I'm really fixated on this spin-off. It's those two are Jaws 3 story. But so we've got Little Shark. Well, we don't know at this point. We've got Little Shark in a tank, and the Sea World is open, and he doesn't last very long.
Well, Bouchard decides to move him against the wishes of the expert. I mean, if everyone had listened to this woman at the start of the film, this whole thing would have been avoided.
There's a lesson in there for everyone.
There is a huge lesson in there, yes.
Ignore the experts.
Misogyny is bullshit. Just listen to the woman and, you can save yourself an hour and 30 minutes at the cinema. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Bouchard is very much... He's a very louche, cavalier type.
Absolutely.
He doesn't really listen to health and safety. He's very gung-ho with what he wants to do.
He spent $4 million. It's his part. Makes the rules.
He keeps reminding us.
He tells his lackey that, yeah.
And he moves this shark into what looks like a glorified puddle. I'd think if you had a shark... I'm not saying he deserves the same treatment as a great killer whale or something, but he just sort of sticks him somewhere. It's like, it's like when you have a goldfish tank.
You'd want some coloured sand and a little sort of galleon with bubbles coming up in it, wouldn't you? Just a little something there for interest, visual interest.
And as I say, it doesn't last very long, and within a couple of seconds he seems to be floating on his back, and and you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, given it's obviously this fake shark, actually having a rubber shark is perfect because it's the most lifelike part of the whole thing when it actually rolls over onto its back and then just sort of sits there completely dead in the water. And you think, that's pretty lifelike, it's
going
good.
Back to the original film where the prop was Bruce, wasn't it? Because after it was Spielberg's lawyer, and this time round, this one is so lifeless. It's probably got. I had to think what his name was. It's just something weedy and like Mr. Bean sort of thing.
Cecil.
Cecil the Shark, I like that.
Cecil the Shark, that works.
And again, something that dates the film, back to the 80s and not in the current days, the fact that there's no gawping morons sitting there filming it on a mobile phone going, this is going straight onto YouTube.
Yeah, they're actually just watching.
They don't look very surprised or shocked.
No, it's like, it's another dead shark. Yeah,
the rubber shark has just turned around.
Yeah, but there's quite a crowd for that dead rubber shark, really. Considering, and there's two people in the water with it.
It might be a big fake out, and all of a sudden it decides it's going to eat them. That'd be good on YouTube.
That would be great on YouTube. If it'd been last.
Yeah, we should go back in time. He's dead. Happy days. Film over. Oh, no, it's not. Magnum PI rocks up in the underwater tunnels. Yeah,
which has only just been opened. The Undersea Kingdom has been opened. I don't know if you noticed, the woman dressed up as a mermaid at the entrance to the undersea tunnels, who, for an exhibit which has just opened, it's cost $34 million, don't forget, They've hired the best. They've spared no expense. It's a whole thing going on like that. She is the most disinterested member of staff that park hires.
She's there on a temp as a student job.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing missing is a fag hanging out of the mouth and just fuck off inside. Just go in. You know, it's open. Go in. She is that disinterested. It is a monotonous tone. It's got nothing to actually bring people into it. But she's doing a job. She's wearing a pair of flippers or whatever it is. She's looking like a mermaid. And yeah, you're right. We're suddenly in this glorious undersea kingdom, which is 3D-tastic.
Oh, it's a 3D heaven, and everyone's down there, exploring. No one's particularly worried, because why would you? You think $34 million, money well spent.
Absolutely. I mean, you get plastic barracudas that come out of a set that looks as if it was left over from Star Trek, and this woman gets wrapped in this sort of faux set of tentacles that comes through the wall.
That was really weird. That was... I found that quite seedy.
Come to the undersea kingdom and get groped by the marine life.
It was like a U-Tree theme park. Like the Radio 1 Roadshow of 1983, and all of a sudden all the young teenage girls getting grabbed. That was really... was odd. Again, misogyny, because I didn't see any men getting grabbed.
And while you're getting groped by an octopus, here's Kajagoogoo.
Pop pickers. So, God, that was really scary. But not in the way that it probably should have been.
Not in the way it should have been, no.
So we're in the underwater tunnels, and it's very lovely. You've got your random wooden galleon in the distance, because you've got to give them something to look at.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Magnum P.I., what's left of him.
He decides to take the role of Ben Gardner from the first film.
Yes.
Up pops the head.
Just to spook him. Is it a prop? Oh no, this is a genuine...
Yeah.
This shouldn't be here.
Absolutely. But it is just his head that pops up, if I remember right. I don't remember seeing much else going on. But the next thing you see, he's got his head, like, attached to his whole body. Well, what's left of it. So, yeah.
So they do a full sort of autopsy sort of thing, don't they?
It's quite weird. For a guy who's supposedly been eaten by a shark, he looks as if he's been skinned alive. And for a shark to do that would be interesting, to say the least. I mean, we're sort of getting out of the realms of reality. The shark's decided, well, I'll just take off the skin. It's a little bit fatty. I'm going to go, right to the muscle and the sinew.
And jumping again slightly, the expert type people come in and immediately evaluate that the shark that's done this couldn't possibly be the one that they had, because bite radius, which you only ever hear in Jaws films, probably gives it 35 foot, wasn't it? It's
got a yard's bite radius, and it's about 35 foot, 10 foot longer than the shark in Jaws, which immediately, of course, makes this a much better film because it's apparently a bigger shark.
Just make it bigger. Just turn it up to 11.
Absolutely.
And so immediately, and I can't remember how they established immediately that this big shark is the mother of Cecil.
Cecil.
Yeah, I'm just going to call him Cecil.
Absolutely.
This shark obviously is still inside the gates.
Yeah.
The way that this chummy was found.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can be a little bit more specific now, can't we? Because the other thing, apparently, the only other thing that gets mentioned more than the grenades is the filtration system.
And the 1 million litres of fresh salt water every hour.
Absolutely. Filtration system gets mentioned just as much as the word governor. It's just totally there. So we know where it's stuck.
Yeah. And it's sort of makes its way through. It's so strong and so powerful that it fights the 1 million litres of seawater. It fights gravity just to avenge, because, and as we'll see in the sequel that we'll come to in the near future, sharks are capable of these emotions.
They are. Sharks like this are capable of a number of things. Emotions, knowing Cecil is nowhere to be seen, and suddenly the one thing that this thing does have, though, it can swim backwards.
Yes.
Now, I hope we spend a lot of time talking about sharks swimming backwards, but this is something that hasn't been tackled in Jaws or Jaws 2. And I'll tell you what, 35 foot in length, a yard's bite radius, and it can swim backwards. This thing should be king of the oceans.
It's like something out of a Justice League film or something, isn't it? Where
Well, not that much, surely.
They've had to give it these powers that it didn't have before, just to make it justified.
Absolutely.
It's just make it swim backwards. It'll start talking soon. Well, to be fair, let's not beat around the bush. That happens in Jaws 4. It makes noises. It
does. Well, this one makes noises. It growls. You actually get this sort of sound effect when it's full on in the screen. It's got this sort of snarling, growling kind of voice, which is, as things go, that's pretty impressive. But you say we are not long in the Jaws sequence if they do decide to reboot it until one of them is actually going to start speaking. And I do hope we actually go back and revisit the Danny Dyer idea, because I'd love a show to have Danny Dyer's voice coming on.
Proper naughty.
Proper naughty. Yeah.
While all this is going on, the rich and the VIPs of SeaWorld are sitting in their very high-tech cocktail lounges and so forth.
The Neptune Room.
Yeah, which is, I think, the same thing from Benidorm, so that kind of dates it. But you've got Louis Gossett Jr. making... I'll be honest, it takes a lot to even... I wouldn't say even offend me. If you get Louis Gossett Jr. making jokes about segregation... that's weird.
That's yeah. I mean, I thought the misogyny and the whole thing with regards to the situation with SeaWorld was bad enough, and then the whole thing with segregation. It's just like, a film in 1983 when the shark is probably the most relatable, the most sympathetic character in it is pretty good going, really.
I mean, it's really well written. I mean, we feel sorry for Cecil,
we do.
and Mrs. Cecil is clearly doing the Lord's work and getting rid of all this human detritus. We've got Magnum PI, we've got the racist Louis Gossett Jr.
Yeah.
And
dispensable cockneys. And I think the sooner we can get rid of all of those, the better, to be perfectly honest. Yeah.
We should just weaponise them. And the random part where the shark starts ramming the tunnels.
But we've got more water skiers before that.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Bouchard, Louis Gossett Jr., he wants to seal the park.
Yes.
And then seal the park, and then more water skiers. And this is the moment where Dennis Quaid suddenly begins his epic breakdown.
He does, because, of course, the water skiing is the grand part. That's why you go to SeaWorld.
Absolutely. And Dennis Quaid has now got to warn everyone, including the water skiers, who miraculously have some anti-shark bat spray sprayed on before they go into the water. So what does Dennis Quaid do to try and warn these people? He nicks a popcorn truck. something with less speed than a milk float, and he decides to take it along. It's like that scene in Deadpool when he's on the ice rink and the guy is in front. In about 5 minutes, you'll be dead. He just has to nick a popcorn truck, and he's that unskilled at driving these things, he loses it on a 2-foot embankment and rolls it over.
And that's where, if it was in The Simpsons or something, popcorn would be flying out of this thing, just feeding thousands. I mean,
if the budget was any bigger on the film, they'd have totally gone through like a vegetable store, like a car festival. No, all they could do is afford a popcorn truck, up a 2-foot embankment, and then Dennis Quaid decides to, suddenly completely lose it and shouts at everyone. Goes on a jetty, grabs this microphone from this guy who's trying to entertain 300 people who haven't yet noticed Dennis Quaid shouting, "Get out of the water," and basically punches this guy for the microphone.
He really wants to be on stage thinking it's open mic.
He's totally looking for his moment,
Not content with being probably unrealistically overqualified for this job. Maybe he got it because his dad pulled in a favour or something. But, he's running around like a lunatic, basically trying to emulate his dad on a beach, but this doesn't really have the same sort of gravity.
There's no whistles, there's no bells, there's no shark towers, there's just a popcorn truck and a guy with a microphone trying to entertain 300 people. And what can you do? You've just got to punch a guy and take his microphone.
In front of an audience of gurning idiots.
Yeah, who have actually no idea what's going on and think it's part of the show.
Because it's, as you watch a bit of water skiing, you've got to have a local man have a breakdown. It's like being outside of Weatherspoons, isn't it? Yeah.
But I mean, if I was sitting there and I was watching the entertainment, I'd be sitting there thinking, where's the popcorn? There's no one here to sell me popcorn. Dennis Quaid tipped the bloody thing over half a mile away at a 2-foot embankment.
That'll come out of his wages.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this is, again, with the water skiing, and probably very scary if you're there, the shark fin comes up. And obviously this one is 3 times the size of the one that came up earlier when it was chasing the dolphins. And like you say, they had the Batman the movie anti-shark spray to keep them away, because as you said, none of them were hurt, were they?
No. I mean, every time you see a water skier, they increase in number. It's not exactly the whole USS Indianapolis. If everyone on the USS Indianapolis had been a water skier, they would have been fine. But in this film, you're a water skier, you're fine, no problem at all. He's got a whole smorgasbord in front of him, and he still misses them all.
It's a good lesson for life. Take up water skiing. You'll be safe.
I mean, of course, we can't discount the possibility that mother and son might have had some sort of thing going on, that they weren't quite all there, distances, direction coordination, and they just completely, they might have just been scared of the humans as much as we were. Perhaps it was the 80s hairspray.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Again, spin-off territory.
Spin-off territory, yeah.
So we've had the water skiing, but we've had Dennis Quaid, where he really should have been carted off for all sorts,
damage to popcorn trucks, yeah.
And I imagine he thinks he can get away with it because of whatever his job is.
Absolutely.
So the shark, because she is irritated by the fact that she didn't eat any water skiers, decides there's some plastic tunnels, and acting a bit like my dog, just decides I'm going to run headfirst at it.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to think it's got a bit of an understanding around the dynamics and the physics of the fact that if you ram this, you're going to induce panic as well, and maybe that'll make the humans taste nicer. Where if they're panicking because they're going to drown slowly, and they're running around these tunnels because the water's starting to come in, and it's like a scene out of Airplane where they're running around screaming.
Assume correct positions. Yeah.
And the typical, they obviously hired the better people for the tour guide, but the lady standing going, "There's nothing to see here, calm down, just take a breath, get yourself, find yourself a little corner and keep warm, don't worry.
Yeah, it'll all be fine, no worries at all.
And in the theme of misogyny, a man will come and save us at some point.
Absolutely, yes. It's amazing, how women survived until 1983, to be perfectly honest, without men doing everything for them. It's terrible. But, I mean, every man in this film, I think it is actually only men that get eaten in this film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously...
And rightly so.
Well, yeah, I totally agree. But Leah Thompson gets a leg bitten, I do believe, from the old bumper boats a little bit earlier.
Yeah, but again, that she's the only water skier who does sort of have any sort of injury, but that's her fault for being, pushing Brody Jr. into his sort of against his fears. Perhaps she overdid it a little bit, but
and perhaps the shark is just really remorseful, thinking, well, actually, no, I'm eating one of the most likable characters in the entire film. Maybe I'm just not going to, I'll just go and find someone else to eat. So yeah,
butterflesh wound.
Butterflesh wound. Yeah, she certainly fared better than Magnum PI.
Oh yeah, well, so the moustache did it for him, I think.
Actually, the moustache actually survived the whole thing. It was still on his face in the autopsy. Yeah,
it's an indestructible quality.
The indestructible 80s. Yes, but again, it's the hairspray.
After the tunnels and the staff and everyone at SeaWorld, they, of course, have a welding factory on site, as you do.
Oh, as you do. A mere few hours later to actually, weld a patch for the tunnel.
And Dennis Quaid, being Dennis Quaid, man of many talents, supervises this, takes a little bit of a time out to speak to his girlfriend and decides to move to Venezuela.
Yes.
Which was just a very strange plot device. Well, even plot device is giving it a bit too much credit.
Yeah, just something else thrown in the mix, really.
Yeah, and there's no, I don't know, are there sharks in Venezuela? Probably.
Yeah. Well, there will be by the fifth Jaws film, yeah.
This time it's personal. So they slowly... I'm fed up now. This film is just...
into one, doesn't it? Yeah. I think basically what happens is they decide, right, we can go and fix the tunnel where these 30 odd people are drowning, and I think they can only afford 20 people for the tunnel. But if you just say it's 30 people, it will be 30 people. And the only way they can do that and do it safely is if Fitzroy and his governor mate Jacko go and lure money back into the filtration system and then close this whole sort of cage behind them, allowing them to get on with it. So that's what they do. And Fitzroy's deciding he wants to film the whole thing for his pension fund, which is an immediate sort of signal. Pension fund, he's thinking in long term, he's thinking long life, and you think when anyone mentions something like that, he is definitely not on good territory with a shark. So they get them down into there, decide we can trap them in there, they can go and fix all the tunnel, all will be well, and then they can kill the shark at their own convenience.
Absolutely. But it's just a sad end, really, for Fitzroyce.
It is.
He's a despicable human. He's leaving behind his beloved Jacko. Oh. And Jacko's tears, they're genuine.
It's more believable than the romance between Dennis Quaid and his partner, to be perfectly honest. There's a definite bond there. But he doesn't even eat Fitzroyce, does he? The whole shark. He doesn't even eat him. He just sort of sits in his mouth and crushes.
And again, what we learned is actually quite an important thing, is that this shark, whether it's indigestion or something like that, or he's stuck between the teeth, and it's important that we see Fitzroyce is just in the shark's mouth, and the shark's so big that you wouldn't notice, because with its yards bite radius, that he just stands there holding out one of Her Majesty's Ordnance grenades.
Yeah, one of Danny Dyer's family's finest.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's where it stays. I mean, we already know from this point where the film is going. It's just the whole process of thinking, everyone's checking the watch, thinking, well, how long until somebody pulls the pin?
Because there's no reason on earth he would be there, because every other person gets swallowed, or at least part of them. But why would a shark then carry on swimming around with his arm sticking out, holding a grenade?
Absolutely. I mean, acid reflux is one thing, but, grenade reflux, it would totally do it. But there's a really weird thing that happens, because obviously Fitzroyce he doesn't actually get eaten, he just lodges in his throat. I mean, you'd totally be choking that up. But when obviously Fitzroyce dies, and the shark then decides to basically turn back, and he goes after Dennis Quaid, who's fixing the tunnel, and that all gets resolved, and they all go up back into the control room, this sort of central area. When the shark does the infamous breaking into the control room, and Fitzroyce is obviously still in the mouth, the shark still somehow manages to eat Bouchard's nephew.
Yes.
And he suddenly gets swallowed, but Fitzroyce is still in the mouth.
It's strange, because in the bit where he's not being eaten, but you could actually see from inside the shark.
Yeah.
Don't you? Where it's almost like he's in there hiding. He's using the shark as camouflage.
Yeah. Well, perhaps that's Fitzroyce's camera, and it's like the first example of like a footage from deeper inside the shark.
And we cross live to the shark's stomach, and here's Fitzroyce.
Again, YouTube gold if you can get it. Yeah.
What an angle that was. Cinematography is excellent. But we go to that bit where the shark. Oh, that bit. Part when I was a kid and I saw this on the telly. Yeah. And of course, I don't know how old I was, maybe 7 or 8 the first time. And I saw it and I thought, my God, that's scary.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous. It's just the shark doesn't do anything. It just floats. Yeah. It doesn't. No part of it moves.
It's a torpedo.
It's a torpedo that just before it hits the window, its mouth moves a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. As though, if I just open my mouth a little bit, I'll have more, oomph to actually go through this perspex screen.
And I guess if you're watching this in the cinema in 1983 with your red and blue 3D glasses.
Yeah, I imagine it looks fantastic.
Yeah, but and then it's in this control room trying to just bite everything.
Yes. I mean, Bouchard is very telling here. He's got this unconscious woman who's sort of been knocked unconscious when the shark comes through, and he's got his nephew there. And for somehow, when the whole room fills with water, he's still able, without any breathing apparatus or anything, to function perfectly. And he's got a split-second choice. He can either save the unconscious woman or his nephew, family, blood ties. And he's straight up with the woman. He's straight up there. His nephew is gone. Whether he's thinking, that's one less person I've got to, factor into the will, I don't know. But
or just the fact that he's got an unconscious woman, and judging by his...
Well, yeah.
We'll move on.
We'll just get that misogyny theme right the way through the film.
I've got a great bit in the tunnels where I can take you and something will grab you and hold on. It's great.
Yeah, we just got to wait for the welding to finish.
And the shark is in this control room. It's filling up with water, and people they're scared, they're panicking. But what's that in his mouth? He's got something stuck in his teeth.
It looks like Her Majesty's Ordnance.
I remember them from earlier in the film.
Yeah.
I'm glad I was paying attention. Of course, got the little pole thingy with a hook on the end.
Yes.
And it's just too... I don't want to give this film any credit. I really don't.
No.
But, as you said, the previous films telegraphed the death of the shark.
Absolutely.
And the quality of the films descends rapidly. They keep that tradition alive.
They totally do. I mean... It's preceded, obviously, we've talked about, the shark coming through the whole sort of glass screen at such a slow pace. And it's such a slow pace that they actually have to film a slow motion section of all the reactions to it. Just more exciting. And then it all suddenly sort of speeds up. There's this whole big tunnel. They suddenly clip the old pin out of the grenade. And, as I say, and then boom. 3D teeth. So we've had 3D fishers' heads, we've had 3D arms, we've had 3D tunnels, and now we're finishing off with a 3D set of sort of half blown up dentures.
But I'd like to think the worst bit of 3D is still to come.
The worst bit of 3D still to come. Oh, the dolphins!
The dolphins!
Right at the end!
So everyone who matters escapes from the undersea kingdom. The dolphins have managed to secure themselves somewhere safe and come to the rescue. It's all very happy, and it's like the end of Free Willy, really. And the dolphins dance.
They do.
In 3D, in perfect synchronicity.
In yellowy 3D as well. There's a sort of yellow tinge to them. So, they've been down there so long that somehow they picked up jaundice. We've got jaundiced dolphins in 3D. I mean, they should have put that on the poster, to be perfectly honest. They'd have doubled the revenue.
Plenty of animals were harmed in the making of this film.
And a few careers.
I mean, Dennis Quaid went on to great things.
Yes, he did, yeah.
We're trying to think of the
That's about it, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Louis Gossett did Iron Eagle, but I'd say great things.
And of course, this is the only film in the Jaws franchise where the shark actually dies completely underwater. In the first film, he's on the surface of the water. The second film, he's on the surface of the water. And on the fourth film, he's again doing his Free Willy bit with the old boat going through him. So he's actually fully submerged in the water when he dies in this one.
It's nice that something individuals come out of this.
It is, actually. It's about the only thing I can think of, but yeah.
It's strange. When my wife asked me about this film, she said, what was it like rewatching it? And it's difficult because, again, watch the first film a lot because it is a genuinely brilliant, great film.
Absolutely.
One of the all-time classics. And yet, something that we've seen in numerous franchises where, a film will start with a classic and just go horribly downhill. Spielberg gets involved a lot.
It's the law of diminishing returns. I mean, this was the summer of 83, or 83 was brilliant, when you also had Superman 3 and obviously what was at the time Star Wars 3, Return of the Jedi out in the cinemas at the same time. Big budget films, and this was something which, I mean, was it ever actually going to be up there with what it is? It's a product of its time. And I still think it would have been better off with going down the whole spoof route.
I think so. I mean, it's something that worked in other franchises where they've clearly done a spoof or they've spun off in a way that suggests, but this, there is that element where it just has that little bit too much taking itself seriously.
Yes.
And I think it really would benefit from, I'm not saying a musical number or anything like that, but it's...
I don't know. You've got Dancing Dolphins, a musical number would be too hard pressed to find.
Dennis Quaid running along to the Yakety Sax from Benny Hill. But...
with a popcorn.
It's just it is bad because this film, it's so memorable for being unmemorable. Everyone remembers Jaws 3.
Yeah.
I'd argue more than the second one, in a way.
Yes. I mean, purely because of the aspect. You all remember the shark coming through the control room screen, and it's all that kind of thing. It's images which possibly aren't the most memorable images in terms of, happy memories or, positive memories, but you remember, I mean, in Jaws 2, it's just a load of kids, going out to sea and then getting, fried on an electric pole at the end. I mean, this one, we have basically misogynists on an away day to Centre Parks and, end up sort of pulling a grenade and away he goes.
It's like if they decided to hold the next Conservative Party conference in some dodgy Centre Parks or something.
Well, or Centre Parks, yeah.
Well, yeah. Let's not beat around the bush. It's strange because when we spoke before recording the pod about which film did you want to do, and Jaws 3 and obviously subsequently the Revenge as well were the ones that you sort of immediately went for, and I didn't go, because I've had some others where I've gone, oh God, I'm very indifferent to those films or whatever. But these two, they're bad, but they're memorable, and they're really awfully bad.
If they're memorable purely for being bad, there's something you can take away from them. I mean, obviously in this one, it's the whole aspect of the 3D. And out of all the films, the 3D films that you had in the 80s, this is probably the most memorable, or the one that everyone remembers from that time. And obviously, in the fourth one, The Revenge, you all remember Michael Caine and the house he subsequently, built off the back of his paycheck for that one. But this one, it's still enjoyable for what it is. For the most part of it, it's completely forgettable until the actual shark turns up. Although actually on this rewatch, I'm actually more and more drawn to the character of Magnum PI and his sort of initial death and his recurrence throughout the rest of the film. So yeah, I think I think he's definitely someone I'll watch out for in subsequent watches.
Do you reckon Spielberg's seen this?
Oh, there's a question. He probably has. It was probably on April the 1st at some point.
Someone showed it to him going, you'll never see this new Jaws film.
I mean, as I said at the start, he was dead against this, Jaws 3 Humans Nil being done as a spoof. He wanted it. He said, you're basically dumping on your own doorstep if you do it. And I'd like to think that, if he did watch it, he'd sort of look at someone and think, I thought I told you not to make a spoof film. It's kind of got that whole feel to it. I say it's typically 80s in what it does. It's got the butch guys. It's got all the women with big hair and the whole sort of money thrown at it. The 3D aspect. It really should be better than it actually is. But it's still memorable enough that we're sitting here talking about it now.
Yeah. And the strange, and I know in the future we'll come and we'll watch Jaws: The Revenge.
Will we?
Well, we did promise, didn't we?
We did promise to do that.
But the fact that the tone changed so drastically again from the third to the fourth film, it's you wonder if someone, a producer or some head honcho at Universal has gone, you know what, I think that didn't go well.
Yes. We
may have missed the boat on
this
one.
I mean, they were kind of stuck from the start because Roy Scheider, sort of famously said that Mephistopheles himself couldn't actually persuade him to come back, and he was only contractually obliged to do Jaws 2 because he was in contract, and I think they actually sort of got him to do Jaws 2, and then he was filming Blue Thunder, I think, at the same time that Jaws 3 came out, so he could sort of get out of his contract with Universal. So he'd obviously had enough of the Jaws. He was definitely off that boat before the rest of us. Which is
a bigger one.
A bigger one, yeah, absolutely. And I can't believe he missed that perfect opportunity there. But yeah, so he couldn't do it. So they obviously had to take it somewhere else. Obviously, they went right back to it and thought, well, we'll bring his wife in for the next one, which they thought, they obviously learnt the lessons from the third one and thought, well, we'll try and shoehorn in something back, for the next one. So I think perhaps lessons were learned from that. But, on its own, it's essentially the Halloween 3 of Jaws films.
Ooh.
Because if you think Halloween 3 has got nothing to do with the Michael Myers sort of situation, you've got the standalone Season of the Witch, and this is very much that sort of ilk. It's the standalone Jaws film that doesn't follow the rest of the mythology.
It's the anthology.
That's the one.
Yeah, ooh, like it.
That's the one.
Anyway, well, on that bombshell.
On that.
Simon,
far too much credit. Yeah.
Well, Simon, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
I'll be honest, it's been a hoot because it was, as I say to most of my guests, it's a perfect excuse to re-watch these films. Some of them I'm enjoying more than others, but this...
Dare I ask where you sit on the fence with this? No.
But
educated guess. Yeah.
I've enjoyed it massively. The film, as you say, is forgettable, but I've enjoyed actually going back and looking at it as a adult and not a child who's scared of these things, which I'm embarrassed at, to be honest. If people want to follow you on Twitter, where can they find you?
Yeah, it's Simon_Pegg, obviously at Simon_Pegg. That's where you'll find me on Twitter. I'll prepare to lose a whole lot of followers after listening to this subsequently. So that's where you can find me online.
And as I say, we'll be back in the future to discuss the almighty Jaws the Revenge,
which actually means I'm going to have to take it out of the wrapping on the Blu-ray to actually watch it. So it's still sitting in a wrapper waiting for Michael Caine to pass away, and then I was going to get a ceremonial airing.
I think I did the wise thing and bought the multi-pack of. Well, although weirdly, like most multi-packs, it misses the good one, and it has Jaws 2, 3, and 4 on it. I should really watch Jaws 2 at some point. But and again in the future we'll also be back and watch Aliens, which I'm looking forward to a whole lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Looking forward to that immensely.
Well, thank you very much for joining us at Betamax Video Club. I'm going to go and return the video before I get charged a late fee, and I will see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Cheers.